Welcome to Liberty Free to Be, the podcast that celebrates women finding their voice, their confidence, and their own version of freedom. I'm your host, Rachel Peru, speaker, model, storyteller, and a champion of showing up as your most unapologetic self. Each episode, I sit down with incredible women who share the real, powerful, sometimes messy stories that shaped who we are today. So settle in. This is your reminder that you are free to grow, free to change, and free to be fully, fabulously you. Welcome back to the Liberty Free to Be podcast. It feels so good to be back after having a year's break, and I have got some amazing women lined up, starting with the fabulous Fiona Lambert. And if you don't know about her already, you must go follow her on Instagram because she is an extremely inspirational woman over the age of 60. We need to hear more voices, and we have got so much to talk about today. If you don't know about Fiona, she has had a 37-year highly successful career in the fashion industry. She's been one of the UK's leading businesswomen in this area, working with brands, transforming them, such as Jaeger with M&S, George, the supermarket chain. She's had such success with that. And then everything changed at 60. And she's now an author of 2 books, and we have got a lot to unravel this morning. So thank you so much, Fiona, for joining me.
Well, mutual admiration society actually here, Rachel. So I look at you and thoroughly admire what you're doing to challenge ageism. So it's a real delight to chat to you today.
And you know what, I've said in the introduction that we don't hear enough from women over 60. And, you had a hugely successful career in the fashion industry. You've been really at the pivot of transforming lots of successful brands. So you, from the outside, you had this kind of immensely successful career, but still when it got to turning to 60, you were starting to feel a bit uneasy about it and uncomfortable, weren't you?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. And, I guess the fashion industry, however you look at it, is an industry that's based on looks, I guess, and how you look. And, I very much wanted to work on how you feel in clothes as well. So hopefully I brought some of that to what I did and the emotions that, wearing fabulous things makes you feel. But as I approached 60, the sound of saying that I was 60 felt old in my head. And, I know stats from marketing that, that although 25% of the population are over 60 and they have 27% of the money, only 3% of advertising is on people over 60.
Yes.
So I guess somewhere in the background, there was this perception that 60 was getting old. And as it transpired, I was made redundant about 3 months before I turned 60. And the combination of the two things made me, more than anything, want to prove to myself and to society that 60 wasn't old. And I got the opportunity to challenge myself to get to the fittest I could be for 60, which I did. And then a whole lot of other doors opened up because of it.
It's important to say here, you were fit already. So it wasn't that you'd been inactive and you weren't doing things to look after your body, but you just got to this point where you thought, actually, I'm going to see what my body's capable of and how I can transform it.
100%, 100%. And actually the good thing in doing it, I guess, because my career was in fashion and that's where my knowledge was. In working on myself, I ended up learning so much more. I studied PT training, but I also studied nutrition. I looked at the effects of cutting sugar out my diet when I sort of was, sort of doing a bit of an overhaul as I approached 60, and created so many good habits that have now stuck, because I learned much more about how important it is to have, a higher muscle percentage in your body, for example, as you age. So I've loved the learning and the challenges that have come with doing it. And, you mentioned Instagram, I do try to share that because I don't want anybody to feel intimidated. My lifestyle was a busy working woman, and, being able to share tips of how you can do things with your time short, and sort of quick hacks and quick swaps in your diet, or the, supplements you can take that make a difference. I find a real pleasure in sharing that.
And, it got picked up, but your journey got picked up by the Times, which was, I guess, kind of a pivotal time for you to think, okay, how can I get my message out there even more?
Yeah, it's one of those when I was saying about, sort of whole world of doors opened up. And actually, I'm a big believer in saying yes to things that, that you don't expect because, you just don't know what is going to happen.
Yes.
And yeah, so I was approached because I'd obviously posted on social media about getting fit. A friend of mine who used to work with me in the fashion industry actually worked with the publishers. And so they saw the Times cover the article and they approached me and said, oh, we think that would be a great book as well. So, being featured in the Times, which was unexpected, then gave me the unexpected opportunity to write my first book as well and become a published author, which was certainly something I'd never expected to do. If you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, it wasn't any kind of plan, but I enjoy communication. I enjoy writing. I'd like to think what's made me successful in my career. I'm very creative, whether it is cooking or hosting parties or painting. And I enjoyed the creative aspect of writing the book as well. I had a vision of how I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be quite colourful, fun, be easy to follow, and inspiration for people, hopefully, who, like I said, I don't want people to feel intimidated by anything I do. This is accessible, whether it is workouts at home, you don't have to go to the gym, workouts in the kitchen. And yeah, so hence Invincible, Not Invisible was written, which was very much about why should we become invisible at 60?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love the title, and I think the message is so strong. But what I really like about the book is it's not just about because it's that time of year, isn't it? We're seeing it everywhere, where everyone's saying, "New year, new me. I've got to suddenly change my body, and I've got to just throw myself at the gym." But what I really liked about your approach is about you've got to get that mindset right first before you can do all that. And I think that's the bit that quite often is why we fail so much at these targets because we
Yeah.
don't get that mindset right. How
Yeah.
hard was that for you to shift that mindset?
Well, I think because I've studied life coaching as one of the other things I did actually, when I was made redundant another time, I took a year, to study life coaching, thinking it would come in useful, in leadership roles in the future. And I learned so much about the power of the mind, and your mind is much stronger often than your body, and that how to set goals and smart goals, and how you set a time frame and you have a purpose to them. I knew how powerful that was. So it was interesting. I was speaking to somebody else. I probably didn't see it myself, but they said, "Oh, it seems like you've applied your business principles to what you've done." I was thinking, yeah, actually, you're right. So that, the 5 points I made about getting yourself in the right mindset first were first of all about having a purpose. I think if you just look at other people on Instagram and think, I want to look like her, it's not a strong enough purpose. And, whether it is being fit when you're older and being able to, keep active as you age, or whether it is being able to enjoy holidays or spend time with your grandchildren, or, just feel more self-confident. I think there's if you have a strong purpose that you can look at, and you can, whether you create it as a vision board as well that you can keep looking at, it's a really important thing to do. Whether, and actually a lot of the principles, if you read the book, are great for if you want to sort of have a fitness journey, but actually they are great principles if you want to do anything in life. um, yeah, so it was about finding your purpose. The whole thing about preparation, if you prepare for success, you're going to, stand in much better stead. So, whether it's emptying your fridge of rubbish, or and making sure you've got, lots of, great healthy snacks in there. Whether it is carrying water with you all the time, or find actually booking time in your diary for exercise. It is important to have do exercises, have your nails and hair done, and as
Yeah.
important to you, your mental health. So book time out for that. And then there was a lot about perseverance, which was the third P, because a lot of people, it is quite boring. If you stick to a sort of slightly more restricted diet, or if consistency is important in exercise, and consistency by the nature of it does get a bit more repetitive. So, finding tips to help you persevere. People was the next really important thing. And, whether it's business or home, surrounding yourself by people who are radiators, not drains, and finding ways, people who are your cheerleaders was really important. And the last one, which hopefully comes across, is positivity, because I think if you are what you say you are. So I think if you believe you can do it, you will do it.
So right, these 5 Ps, they don't just apply to getting fit and healthy, but it is especially for women at this stage of life that are going through lots of transitions, and maybe they're an empty nester and they've got to find a new sense of purpose. Quite often your friendship groups change as you get older, so that it's surrounding yourself by the right people, which is why I think I really related to the mindset work that you did before all this.
Yeah.
What were your struggles? What were the things that really you struggled with out of those Ps?
Gosh. Well, I've got probably quite a short attention span, or a low boredom threshold. I don't know what you call it. So I do like lots of variety, and perseverance, I think, is probably my weakest P. And it's quite interesting to sort of reread the chapter on that, because I think you can create variety, through, I love hit training. I point out, actually, I sort of only really discovered hit training in the last 5 years, and I'm a massive proponent of it, because, you can burn a lot of calories and get quite fit and healthy just using your body weight at home. And if you, even in 15 minutes, it'll raise your metabolic rate for a couple of hours afterwards. So for anybody that is time short, hit is a great thing to do. But by the nature of it, there are lots of different things you can do, lots of different exercises, lots of different combinations. You can do it in 15 minutes. So for somebody that's got a low boredom threshold like me, finding the exercise you like and that, stimulates you. And, I said 5 years on, I still love doing hit, and I can still find lots of new variations to do. I've worked out you can add weights into it. You can do it indoors, you can do it outdoors, you can do it at home, you can do it at the gym. So, I think perseverance was my weakest P, but there is lots of tips, if you're like me, in the book to help.
And there's lots of great exercises. There's hundreds of exercises. And that's the thing. So many women really struggle getting to the gym, especially if they are feeling, I talk to lots of women that really struggle with their body confidence.
Mm,
And they come from usually a place of self loathing. So getting them to go to the gym to even start that journey is a really big step. But the fact that you've got all these great examples of exercises you can do at home, and like you say, start with 15 minutes and build it
yeah,
up, that's
absolutely.
really that's more accessible, I think, and more relatable to lots of women that are running busy everyday lives.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting you talk about this sort of self-loathing. I mean, we'll probably touch on it, but I've written the second book about dating as well,
Yes.
the SAS 60 and single. I think so much of your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-love, um, and how you talk to yourself in the mirror, I can, or I love, is so much more powerful than, if your body, your body subconsciously and your mind subconsciously listens to your own language. So, I think in both instances, and certainly if anybody's got any self doubts, how you talk to yourself is so important. And, self affirmations. I know it probably does sound a bit cheesy, but, I do think, that that power of words, of going, I am doing this, or, I believe I can do it, and rather than going, I hate exercise, is so negative. Whereas if you can say, uh, I love the feeling of being fitter. It's a very, very powerful tool to use.
Yeah, it really is. It's something that I've had to do because I think that's the other thing. People think that when you talk about body confidence or being self-confident, that that's a done deal and you don't have to work on it.
Mm.
It's a
Oh, no.
consistent roller coaster, isn't it? There are
Well,
days.
it's a muscle you have to work, actually.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your confidence is another muscle you've got to work.
So when you're having those kind of struggle days, when you are battling with yourself, what's the thing that works for you? Is it apart from affirmations?
I actually, genuinely, exercise does help, because
Mm.
uh you know, it's got so many benefits. You know, obviously you are investing in your future self, and you're going to make yourself fitter and stronger. But it does boost your self confidence. You know,
Yeah.
if you're feeling stronger, you know, you will. I guess if you persevere, you'll feel more toned. It boosts your self confidence, but also it boosts your mental resilience because you know you've achieved something, and,
Yes.
you know, to see you've achieved something, uh, actually, that's a real boost. You know, you think, "I've done it." And, you know, whether it's, you know, sticking to an exercise regime, even for a week, you know, you should be congratulating yourself, you know, and feeling good about doing it, and, you know, share it with other people, you know, so they're your cheerleaders too. But I do think exercise is a really good thing for your mental health.
Yeah, I do too. And I love the fact that this ties in with your 60 and single book as well, because it is all about finding that self-love first, and allowing permission, giving yourself permission to look after yourself first. And then the dating will come. So you found yourself single at 60 after a long marriage. Um, I got divorced at 40 and went through that roller coaster. So I can imagine what it's been like for you. But how have you found this whole experience?
It Because I wish I'd read my book before
Yes.
I started dating. So you're right. So my husband and I decided we were going to separate when I was 60. I eventually moved into my own house at 61, which is when I sort of embarked back onto the dating scene. Um, and I learned so much. You know, it was a minefield, and you know, clearly something I hadn't done since my 20s. But what I learned about myself in the 6 months, and, you know, I did some reading. I've got a very good friend who's what a dating, coach, and what I learned from her, from myself, from my experiences, was so much about, how to learn how to be single again. Because, you know, having been in a long relationship and, you know, known my husband for 37 years, you very much become part of a couple and half of a couple, and you probably don't realize how much you adapt or compromise, or you know, maybe you know, I do genuinely feel more myself than I've ever been before, because
Yes.
you know, the bits that you squash out of shape slightly to make a long relationship work. I don't, you know, I can say yes and no to things I want to do now, and I I I don't think I realized that in the first 6 months. You know, I think I probably started dating while I was still in the mentality of being half of a couple. And so in writing the book, it was such an important point that, you know, really work out who you are as a single person. Don't rush into it. Work out, actually, do you need a relationship? You know, do you really want a relationship, or is it just habit? If you do want a relationship, you know, don't fall into necessarily the same traps and the same people, but actually work out the new you, you
Yeah.
know, at 60, as it was in my case, but it could be 40, could be 50. What do you really want for a relationship? And what are your non negotiables? And what are your things you're flexible on? And so I wanted to share all of that self exploration and self learning and self love at the beginning of the book, before, you know, starting the dating process.
Yeah. I found that even simple things like going shopping, it's like, what do I actually like to eat? What do I want my fridge
Yeah,
to have in it? What music do I listen to that I really love?
yeah,
It does take a while. And I think having that time to yourself, I had a couple of years on my own, and I learned so much more about myself and said yes
yeah,
to so many more things because it was me that had to make those decisions.
yeah. And you always look fabulously happy.
Yeah. Well, there were times when I wasn't, but yes. And, you like challenges as well, don't you? You always say, you say yes to things. You've climbed Kilimanjaro. Was that last year or the year before
Was
Kilimanjaro?
actually, that was in my 60th year, so it was October when yeah, so that was actually 2 years ago now, 2 years ago. But
Wow.
my most recent one, I did the Strictly dancing
Strictly.
for charity. So I am currently working out what my next challenge is.
I was going to say that, but how do you kind of, for somebody that might be listening to this, that's really at that in between stage where they're struggling to even find a sense of purpose? Where do you begin to even find that if you're feeling a bit lost? Because I do think challenges help, but you've got to have an idea of what your sense of purpose is first.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. Actually, you know, I think that work on in the first book about, finding your purpose probably would help. I mean, I suppose I know I like a physical challenge, and if I can use that to raise money for charity, it's a win-win situation for me. So it's using my my personal need for sort of setting big audacious goals, but it enables me to raise money for charity. So that works for me. But I think for anybody, you can start small. The goal doesn't have to be climbing Kilimanjaro. You've got to be quite mad to do that. But again, that was an amazing opportunity to raise money for the King's Trust as it is now. But I think I think it can be small goals that make you feel good. I think, and if they are aligned with something that is your purpose, even better. But I don't think, again, I suppose I don't want anybody to feel intimidated by anything I do. Hopefully it's inspiring rather than intimidating. But I think, small goals or big goals, I've just signed up with my mum to do a 6-week watercolor course because it's something she wanted to do, and, that will be lovely to do. Or, I think it just builds, I suppose, on a sense of achievement that helps your confidence. So, yeah, start with tiny goals if that's what works for you, and then you can find your mountain afterwards.
Yeah. I found charity work for me because when I was really struggling with my own self-belief and self-confidence, I found actually giving back and doing some charity work really helped build my confidence as well. So I got a lot more out of it than I was giving. It was a give and take, but I do definitely think that charity work gives you such a boost, doesn't it, of confidence?
Well, um, I think it's a real, yeah, I think it's proven to be a real dopamine hit to be
Mm,
kind.
yeah.
So, why wouldn't you be kind to, and I think, giving your time to charity is one of the ultimate ways to do it.
Yeah. And how do you feel now about aging? Because obviously you were slightly nervous about it, and now
Yeah.
you own it, and it's fabulous. But how do you feel it? How has your kind of feelings changed towards that process?
Genuinely, I mean, I'm 63 soon, and it is quite interesting, when I have no qualms about saying my age now, because I think, well, hopefully I'm out there proving that 60 is a beginning and not a beginning of the end. And I think if that gives anybody else confidence to think, actually, it isn't something to be ashamed of, or isn't something to be worried about, that life definitely isn't over as you turn 60. If anything, mine's begun, whether it is, having a pivot and finding, new ways of working, or, continuing to do even bigger challenges to raise money for charity, or, still trying new things. Um, 60 is definitely not an age to, well, it isn't old. It isn't
No.
old.
No, it's not. I know so many women that are, like you say, starting new careers or new hobbies and new adventures at 60, and it's really inspiring for me at
Yeah.
55. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, bring it on. I'll be there with that. So let's go back to the fashion industry then, because obviously you've had an extensive career with fashion industry, and I would say that usually a lot of the time it's been with brands that somebody our age would shop with. Um, so why do you think there is still this battle of representation of older women in the industry?
Yeah, I've obviously had to think about this. And I think what's interesting is we remember and know what it's like to be younger. I think when you're young, and I'm sure, I remember at 20 or in my 20s, it was the time when everybody used to go on sunbeds. Sorry, confession there, but
Yes.
you
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah.
And somebody went, "Oh, when you're 40, it'll make you really wrinkly." And I thought, "I won't care when I'm 40," and I do.
Yeah.
And then, when and I, probably at 20, I would think 60 was absolutely ancient. And, actually, my daughter will never forgive me for this, but I'm going to quote her. She was talking about my dating, and talking about, and I said, I was talking about whether it was, feeling sexually attracted to someone. She went, "Is it that important at 60 though, mum?" I thought, well,
Yes.
so I think, when you're younger, you just can't imagine what it's like. So I think what's quite interesting is if brands use models, as an older woman, you can look at something on a younger model and you can still picture yourself in it. if a brand photographs something on an older model, it probably alienates a younger person. So that is the only sort of mentality or psychology I can think about
Yeah.
why, because I know it's proved, I've seen it happen. And certainly when I went to work on Jaeger at M&S, one of the first campaigns we did was I wanted to show the range was modernised slightly whilst retaining the Jaeger heritage, but we used a model who was in her 60s and a model in her 20s side by side, wearing very
Yes.
similar clothing. And it
Yeah.
was really important to me to show that it is, it's an ageless brand. So I think we've just got we have just got to continue to, role model that, fashion isn't just for the young.
Yeah, and I think that's why social media plays such an important part in it, doesn't it? Because we can take control. You do show up on social media and give, great style tips and show how you're living your life and the clothes you're wearing. And I think we've never had that before. So our generation now can show up for ourselves, really, can't we?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think I love Instagram and I love the community of Instagram, and we've met through Instagram, so it's I think it's a really good community for women to represent themselves and support other people in combating that ageism.
Has your style changed then? Has it changed in the last kind of 20 years? Are you more confident now in your clothes and the style that you wear?
Yeah, I think I've always been confident in clothes. I think what's quite interesting is just by some weird osmosis, you I mean, I've worked for some big brands, as you mentioned. I had a long time at George at Asda because I was part of the founding team that founded it with George. I was a very long time at Next. I did some time at River Island. I did some doing a startup brand for them, and I was Jaeger M&S. Because you are eating, living, breathing the brand. I think my style, every time I worked with brands, slightly went towards the brand.
Yeah,
Without, I'd still probably very much, dress for myself, but by the nature of it. So I think, has my style changed? Probably, because I think when I've been working for the brands, just slightly mentally, I've been more attuned to them.
yeah,
I think now, my natural taste. I love Alexander McQueen. I love Vivienne Westwood. I loved early All Saints. So I personally like very clever pattern cutting and slightly edgy detail. So because I'm not working for any brand now, that's probably why I end up. That's probably
yes.
my go-to sort of look, because that's my natural taste. Because I did start life as a designer and pattern cutter, so I'm passionate
Oh,
about
did
it.
you?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that.
No, I studied
Oh,
fashion. That was my first role.
right. So you really have immersed your whole career in the fashion industry, haven't you?
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
age 11, I've still got little sketchbooks I did at 11 that I wanted to go into design. So,
Well,
and
could
yeah,
that be a next thing then, Fiona? Could we see a range? That would be exciting.
I'll be. Well, to be honest as well, I did have some T-shirts printed when I did the book Invincible Not Invisible.
Yes.
Actually, people wanted to buy them, and I thought, well, actually, there probably is something in in that in and whether it's the shape of T-shirts you pick, because I think everybody just uh sticks something on a basic T-shirt block and expects to sell it, and actually, I think more stylish and different cuts, etc., would be quite interesting, and making sure you've got those positive affirmations on. So that's something I've got bubbling along in the background at the moment.
Oh, that's exciting. Let's watch this
Yeah.
space. So
What's the
if you've got somebody that's listening to this that is feeling invisible, what's one thing that you could recommend that they start doing now just to make that small, tiny difference?
Oh gosh. I think it does start with yourself. So I
Mm,
do think it is that giving yourself a talk in the mirror and just saying, you look great today, you're going to own the day, and definitely surround yourself with radiators, not drains,
yeah.
because I just think, s- and one of the joys of getting older actually is, I think, not only do I'm a big believer in saying yes to adventures and experiences. I think saying no to things, to people, or experiences that don't bring you joy and make you feel good about yourself, is just as important. And I think for anybody that is feeling invisible, surround yourself with people who make you feel invincible. Whether it's their language, their cheerleading, their positivity, because you are, I think it's the sum of the 5 people you spend most time with. So I think that's really, really important.
Yes, yeah, great advice. So the last couple of questions. One thing actually before I do that is obviously you've had this huge successful career in the fashion industry, and success meant something different, I'm guessing, to what success looks like now to you. What does success mean to you now at Fiona at 60?
Well, gosh, that's a really good question. I think it is to live joyfully and purposefully, actually, because, again, it probably took me a year to unwind from big corporate careers, of feeling a bit, actually, lazy is the wrong word, actually, but um, because I wasn't working in a big team of people with big strategic goals. I guess, I ended up writing the book, etc., and things like that. So, still had goals to work to. But I think, being able to focus on being fitter, being able to share that with people, and genuinely, I'm not, I haven't got a gazillion followers. I'm not, I haven't really got any sort of commercial side to what I'm doing. If I get one lady, which I do actually, and from both books, if I get one lady writing to me on a message saying they're feeling healthier or more confident or more happy because
Yeah,
of something I've written or said, that makes my day, and
yeah,
that actually is success.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. I'm exactly the same, Fiona. It's about making that, creating a ripple effect, isn't it? Just making one person feel better that will hopefully then have a knock-on effect with the people that
Yeah,
she surrounds herself with.
correct.
Yeah, brilliant. So my last two questions. If you were to pay yourself a compliment, what would it be?
Oh, I'd like to think I radiate positivity, because it's one of those things that actually I have been told, which is lovely, but it's one of those hard things. It's very hard to compliment yourself. But I once had a fabulous life coach said to me, "When you feel good, how do you feel?" And I said, I feel like I've got a fire, like a sparkler going on inside me. And he said, well, when you're at your most positive, you can actually catch that. And I can feel these sparklers running down my fingers. And, I think there's a Roald Dahl quote that it's sunshine, sunbeams shine from your eyes. And I think actually, if I can help radiate positivity that helps other people, I suppose that is such a compliment.
Yeah. Do you find it hard to accept compliments?
Yes. Well, I'm probably not as bad as some people. My mum's
Mm,
terrible.
yeah.
Um, and I try to be very gracious and say thank you very much, but it's one of those things that I think it's whether it's just a very British thing that you've got this compulsion
Yes.
to be humble and deny.
And usually
Yes,
it's
exactly.
usually battered off with something self-deprecating, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing that one. And my last question, what does free to be mean to you?
Gosh, I think I've probably talked about it actually. I feel free to be more me than I've ever been. So I'm not in a big corporate career where you're treading a corporate path, and anything you might say might reflect on the company. I'm not in a marriage where I think I probably compromise myself a bit. So actually, being more me than I've ever been is what being free is.
Love it. Thank you so, so much. And I hope and I know that people listening will be inspired by you. And if they don't already, please go and check Fiona out on Instagram at Fiona Lambert Official, because I love seeing your posts. They are really inspiring and they're encouraging me to look after my body a lot more than I have done the last couple
Amazing.
of years. So thank you. And like you said, that's what it's about. It's about creating that ripple effect. The books, Invincible, Not Invisible, and 60 and Single SAS, they're both available, and I'll share the book links as well in the show notes. So definitely go and check those out. Thank you so, so much for joining me, Fiona. And I hope we get to meet again in person this year at some point. But in the meantime, keep being fabulous.
Oh, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you.
Thanks, Fiona. Well, how inspiring is Fiona? I really enjoyed our conversation. That just goes to show you how much we have got to look forward to later in life, and the fact that 60, Fiona has started and pivoted this new horse that's kind of career, found a new sense of purpose, and there is so much more to come. And I want to hear more from ladies like that because I find it really inspiring at 55. I know I need to look after my health a lot more than I am doing, and people like Fiona encourage me and inspire and help motivate me to do that. So glad to have Fiona on the show. As I said, go and follow Fiona Lambert Official on Instagram. And what I really enjoyed about the book, The Invincible Not Invisible, is those 5 Ps: purpose, preparing, perseverance, people, and positivity. And that's something that we can all take away from that because it applies to everything in life. If you are struggling and feeling a bit lost at the moment, having a look at those 5 Ps and working on your mindset first before you can make any real changes is a brilliant place to start. I will be back next week with some more inspiration. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe to the podcast if you're enjoying it. And I will be back soon. So don't forget to download, but keep being fabulous. Thank you so much for listening to Liberty Free to Be, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If it spoke to you, please don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share with somebody who might need a reminder that they are free to be themselves. You can find me on Instagram at RachelCrew1, and don't forget to follow our growing swimwear brand community over at Liberty Free to Be. If you'd like even more connection and conversation, come and join our free Facebook group, the Liberty Lifestyle Hub, where over 300 women are cheering each other on every single day. Until next time, keep being fabulous.